The use of computer-mediated communication to talk with friends and family has changed the way we communicate in our personal relationships. Most of the cues to deception we've been discussing thus far are visual cues like facial expressions and signs of tension and uncertainty. But what happens when those cues are absent? Does it make deceivers more difficult or easier to catch? To begin to frame a link between deception and modality, Carson et al. Suggested that some features of CMC might make a deceiver more transparent. The first one is synchronicity. Whether or not you're speaking at the same time, like in a video conference, or at different times, like in an email, could make a difference. The second cue is rehearsability. Is it spontaneous or not? Remember that planning makes it easier to lie. The third is cue multiplicity. How many cues are available at once? Can you see the person, or is it just their text? We can also examine reprocessability. Is the message archived like an email or a text? Or is it fleeting like a video conference or a phone call? If you can go back and read it again, you might be able to look for cues that you missed the first time. They suggested that these properties augment deceiver transparency. Others diminish it. CMC, such as chat and texting, tends to be more synchronous than email and discussion boards because they allow immediate feedback. When messages are more asynchronous, deceivers have additional time to compose, rehearse, and edit the information that they wish to communicate, which, as you know by now, makes it more difficult to detect them. Does having fewer cues actually help detectors? Well, people who make devices seem to think that getting an approximation of face-to-face is the best approach. And when you're communicating with someone far away, being able to see their reactions through FaceTime and Skype can be a wonderful thing, but I don't think it helps us detect deception. Think about the myths we've discussed earlier. We believe deception is in the eyes and the face, but it's not. If those cues are stripped away, we're left with the voice and the words, which have been shown to be the most diagnostic. Some research suggests that deception over the phone is easier to catch than face-to-face, which suggests that people can fool us with their honest-looking demeanor. On the other hand, anonymity has made it possible for a host of fraudulent schemes to crop up on the internet. Have you ever gotten any emails from foreign princes who want to send you money, but only if they have your bank information? Or a very authentic-looking email saying you're over your mailbox limit, ask you to put in your password so they can adjust your quota? Deception that occurs in CMC has been termed digital deception by Jeff Hancock and takes place in a technologically mediated interaction, meaning that the messages must be exchanged in a medium other than face-to-face. Although most individuals may think digital deception occurs solely in text-based web environments, it also incorporates media such as telephone and video conferencing. Digital deception has recently been characterized by two general categories: identity-based deception and message-based deception. First of all, identity-based deception generally concerns qualities and characteristics of the deceiver. Just as Tom Hanks concealed his true identity from his online friend in the film You've Got Mail, it's relatively easy to disguise yourself in an environment where you may only be known by a handle or a screen name. Examples of identity-based deception are everywhere on the internet. In the online dating environment, individuals have been shown to frequently be deceptive about their physical and socioeconomic characteristic. Yes, I'm 6 feet tall and drive a Ferrari. Identity-based deception typically occurs when the deceiver is unknown to the receiver, and the receiver has little opportunity to verify the deceiver's claims. However, a great many interactions that occur in CMC involve people who already know each other. For example, an employee might email their employer, or two friends instant message each other. A husband calls his wife. These are all examples where identity-based deception is rather unlikely, because in these cases, a second form of deception, message-based deception, might take place instead. These messages are analogous to deceptive messages in a face-to-face interaction because they're about the content rather than the identity of the individuals, and yet the modality of the communication affects these messages too. Let's talk for a minute about the incidence of deception online. I think there are some people who don't trust others very well unless they can meet them face-to-face. They think the internet is a dark and foreboding place where criminals and scam artists are lurking trying to dupe them. In a diary study that asked people to keep track of their lies, Hancock and colleagues found that across modalities, 26% of social interactions contained a lie. but participants told the greatest percentage of lies during telephone conversations, 37%, and this was followed by face-to-face at 27%. Instant messaging was only 21%, and email was only 14%. So lying online is not really more prevalent than other interactions. In further replications, George and Rob conducted 2 additional diary studies. In the first, about 25% of all interactions contained lies, and in the second, about 22%. In both studies, no significant differences were reported in the proportions of lies told in the face-to-face, telephone, instant messaging, and email modalities. In an attempt to more effectively identify deception when it occurs in CMC, researchers have begun to investigate the linguistic properties of CMC messages. Using linguistic cues like lexical diversity, word counts, and affective words, researchers have demonstrated that deceivers can be identified by textual features in emails and chat messages. These messages are automatically extracted from text-based media using computer-based text mining, and the features are not consistently diagnostic across studies. However, within a given context, such computer-based tools may offer the hope of improving deception accuracy. Likewise, in richer modalities like face-to-face, other computer-based tools that consider multiple channels, kinesic, linguistic, and vocalic behaviors, may potentially assist receivers in detecting deception when it's present. So how do we detect online deception? In our chapter on digital deception in the book Computer-Mediated Communication in Personal Relationships, Matthew Jensen and I propose there might be 4 reasons why it's easier to detect deception in mediated environments than face-to-face. First, the reduced attention on nonverbal cues in CMC makes it more likely that receivers will not be misled by honest-looking demeanor and may pay attention to the more diagnostic verbal cues. Second, the fact that a record of interactions and the asynchronous nature of some modalities like email means that receivers can compare messages over time and look for inconsistencies between messages or between senders. Third, the ability of the receiver to hide their suspicion may be increased due to the lack of nonverbal cues, which should reduce the deceiver's ability to adapt and enhance their credibility. Although Burgoon and Kin found that diagnostic ability of text-based cues fades over time, if skilled receivers can successfully probe for information without giving away their suspicions, it may make deception easier to detect. And fourth, channel constriction might reduce the cognitive load of the receiver, which allows them to spend more time scrutinizing the behavior of the deceiver. This is consistent with previous research that suggested that third-party observers are better able to detect deception than participants who are immersed in a conversation. So we've discussed the different features of CMC that make it different from communication face-to-face. Features like reprocessability and the fact that it is sometimes asynchronous. We have discussed the prevalence of online deception and found that it's really not much more common than other types such as telephone or face-to-face. In fact, it may even be easier to detect deception online because of the record that's left and the fact that honest-looking demeanor cues are left out. Since this class is being offered online, it gives us a good chance to think about the way we use media and how deception affects our communication on the internet.